What happens when a normal student is put in charge of geniuses? In this world, there are those that exceed the normal standards of intelligence, even at an early age. And in the Ikanose Academy High School, there are two of them. First, with unparalleled skills in both the field of mathematics and physics, Riza Ogata is nicknamed the Thumbelina Supercomputer, due to her ability to solve equations almost instantly. And on the other end of the genius spectrum, we have Fumino Furuhashi, a student who excels in literature, no matter the language, and in written works. Furuhashi is so talented at compositions that even her teachers cry when reading her essays. Along with her talents, she's also beautiful, which is why most people look up to her. On the other hand, Yuiga isn't quite like those geniuses. In fact, far from it. In order to keep up in school, he has to diligently review every night. Yuiga was very motivated to achieve good grades, as he wanted to be a part of the VIP recommendation of his school. After their class ended, he got called into the headmaster's office. Yuiga got delighted when he heard from the headmaster himself that he was being put into the VIP recommendations. However, there was a catch. Yuiga is being tasked to become the tutor of the two geniuses of their school, Furuhashi and Ogata. When he succeeds in doing so, his VIP consideration would be approved. Still upbeat despite his new task, Yuiga wondered how a normal student like him would be of any help to natural geniuses, and so the unlikely trio met for their first study session. But what was most peculiar was that the two had very different goals despite their skills. Even though Furuhashi is good at literature, she wanted to be good at science, and the opposite goes for Ogata, with her wanting to learn more about literature despite being a math genius. With that, Ogata predicted their new tutor would abandon them as soon as he realized how hard it is. And boy, was it hard. Apparently, the two's genius doesn't translate to anything other than what they're good at. Their tests even got worse as weeks progressed. Their dismal scores led Yuiga to suggest perhaps having each other teach their expertise. It would have been a good idea, but unfortunately, natural-born geniuses can't explain what comes to them naturally. Yuiga was left with no choice but to suggest that they should perhaps consider focusing on what they excel at. This infuriated Ogata, saying that he was just like the other tutors, and that no one will ever tell her what she ought to dream about despite her skills. That night, though, Yuiga was mulling over what he had done. He remembered his father's advice, that people are allowed to make mistakes in order to learn about what they want. It's not about being good at things immediately, but about being persistent enough to eventually become good. With his renewed motivation, he revised the notes the two geniuses had on their notes that they had left. He gave it to them the next morning, along with his apologies, and promised to help them further. It also didn't help that he was awkward spending time with the beautiful girls at such a close distance. Nonetheless, Yuiga was able to learn a bit about his two new students and their motivations apart from being geniuses. As he accompanied Furuhashi home, she told him she wanted to study astronomy because of her mother's favorite star, when Yuiga noticed her looking up at the night sky. Along the way home too, he spotted Ogata playing card games by herself in the park, taking a break from her delivery for their udon shop. By playing with her, he learned that she wanted to study psychology and understand human emotions. Yuiga went home now understanding the geniuses better, although he got teased by his little sister and by his friends the next morning about the time he spent with the girls lately. Yuiga was absent-mindedly shuffling along with his classmates towards their room. The boy was preoccupied with all the tasks that he had to do, which were, he had to finish his report for the headmaster and prepare tests for his two students. This concentration was what made him not notice someone calling out and essentially run him over from behind as a form of greeting. He struggled to get up, though he immediately berated his friend, Takimoto Uraka, to stop doing that whenever they saw each other. Wow. Now that was some kind of entrance. Apparently, his childhood friend was on her way to practice, and so had asked him if she could see his notebook for an assignment. Annoyed, Yuiga told her to do her own work sometimes, since borrowing notes had been her routine since they were in middle school. But rather than being mad about it, it only made Uraka suck up harder to her friend. And again, seeing as how Yuaga was suddenly popular with the girls, his friends couldn't help but stare. It's a different kind of luck, boys. Anyway, Yuaga still went to the headmaster for his report, saying that for now there is a bit of progress among his two students. All seemed well until the headmaster mentioned Uraka and Yuiga being childhood friends. He further explained that the girl was a phenomenal swimmer and an athlete in consideration for their VIP recommendation. The only problem was she was having difficulty in academics. And so, Yuaga got tasked again with something that he truly dreaded as of the moment. Uraka was assigned to be under his tutoring sessions. After the meeting, he went to see Uraka, who by this time was training in the pool. After some snide remarks and the explanations about what he was doing here, Uraka admitted she needed help. but was hesitant to accept the tutoring. This then resulted in the two chasing each other, but as one would expect, Yuiga slipped and fell into the pool, which was unfortunate because he's bad at swimming. Never run near the edge of the pool, guys. Nonetheless, after clamoring about, Yuraka accepted the tutoring after she saw Furuhashi and Ogata as Yuiga's students, hinting that she joined in order to spend time with him as well. On her way home, she looked at Yuaga's notebook, which made her reminisce about how he was nice to her back then. He even supported and praised her diligence in sports, making her blush back then. Meanwhile, Ogata was getting in trouble about not being able to pass a short essay assignment, and so had asked Yuiga for a study session that night. And although Yuraka had asked her out for karaoke, upon learning that she was with Yuiga alone at night at his house, she rushed there in a second. Literally a second later. Unfortunately, their studying was interrupted by a power outage, and this is where they learned that Ogata was afraid of the dark. Yuraka herself tried to snuggle close to Yuiga like Ogata, but didn't since she admitted she isn't that brave. Nonetheless, Yuiga was able to solve their light problem with a makeshift candle. This, along with his words of encouragement about lighting their path with something different, stirred something inside Ogata. And after they got the power back, she left promptly. It was all good though, as the next morning she was finally able to pass her essay, to which she thanked her tutor for. The teachers were surprised and happy for her progress. And although Rizu praised their progress, she knew one student under their new tutor wasn't going that great. And who else but Yuraka? The group then decided to study together, and unsurprisingly, Yuraka found it hard because she didn't find it fun. Yuiga, however, told her that what's most important was perseverance. He also linked this to Yuraka's experience with swimming. Fortunately, this seemed to hit right on the money with Yuraka, making her want to try and do well on the exams. She even had time to be jealous of Furuhashi about certain things. But when she saw her breasts being larger, she was back to being pumped up. But actually, it was only when Yuiga involved swimming with Yuraka's study sessions that she got to master memorization. To his credit, that was a genius way to get someone to study better. As the group walked home during the late afternoon, Yuraka and Yuiga found themselves talking. The former had thanked the latter for the time they spent studying as a group, and she even shyly stated that the best thing about that was Yuiga spending time with her. Real smooth, Yuraka. Although she immediately gave him a gift so as to not drag the conversation further. As she went ahead of him and joined the two geniuses, Yuiga thought it wasn't too bad. Being a tutor, that is. The midterm exams were fast approaching, and so was the pressure that will amount to Yuiga and his friends. During the routine meetings he had with the headmaster, though this time being joined by Rizu, the head stated that he'd like Furuhashi and Ogata to get at least average or higher scores. Of course, Yuiga was shocked at this sudden expectation being put on his tutored students, but nonetheless, the headmaster softly put it as an ultimatum. If the girls weren't able to produce the results, then it would be kinder to divert their attention from their dream courses. If you're going for kindness, then perhaps let them pursue what they want. Still, Yuiga showed confidence in them, saying that somehow, some way, both the girls will pass the midterms with flying colors. With that, the protagonist exited the office, though he failed to notice both Furuhashi and Ogata trailing behind him by coincidence. The two, however, got to listen in to the conversation between the headmaster and Rizu-sensei. Their old tutor said that the only word she can describe Yuiga's tutoring would be negligence, implying they should not let the girls into something they're not good at, regardless of their feelings on the matter. Thanks, Yuiga, for the vote of confidence. The headmaster stayed silent. All the while, Rizu said that if the girls were to not reach their expectations, Yuiga should be removed as their tutor. Upon hearing this, concern overcomes the girls' faces as they realize there's a lot more at stake this time. And during their study sessions, it showed how bothered they are. Apparently, it's happened before, their tutors being replaced after getting bad marks in their midterms. However, this time, both girls went about their ways to prepare for the test. Ogata, even though she had to help in their soba shop, she still invited Yuiga to study till nighttime. Nonetheless, Ogata couldn't help but express her worry that Yuiga will stop being their tutor, as he was the only one to truly support their dreams. But when he assured her that if they failed, they would just study for the next one, she knew Yuiga wouldn't truly abandon them. And it did wonders for her test scores, as Ogata got 71 marks in modern Japan literature. The group was about to celebrate, but Furuhashi's exam was coming up. And right now, she was sick. The usually reserved Furuhashi didn't take Yuiga's advice to have the exam the day after it's scheduled, simply because they will deduct 20% if that happens. Showing the same resolve as Ogata, she persevered about taking the exam. And so, Yuiga and Yuruka took matters into their own hands and nursed their sick friend back to health. Yuruka was able to showcase her cooking skills during this time, and not without daydreaming about her and Yuiga getting married. With all the effort the group poured into the exam, the two finally passed, and with great scores too. The headmaster was impressed, though Kirisu-sensei herself had a hard expression on her face as she saw the results. Nothing is truly impossible with hard work. Meanwhile, Yuruka was going through her own dilemma. While preparing for swimming practice, she got cornered by her teammates because she still hasn't confessed to Yuiga, and in order to solve that problem, they planned to go shopping after school. And so they did. They fitted the poor love-struck girl with a cute pink dress and left with her uniform so that she'll be wearing it out. If Yuruka was cute then, it's like 10 times as much now. Anyways, the shy girl was strolling through town with embarrassing thoughts in her head, particularly how awkward it would be if Yuiga would see her now. And who did she see while strolling down the street? Yuiga himself. That's either great luck or really bad luck. Regardless, she had to come up with an excuse, and they ended up spending the day together when her alibi was about a bookstore. There, they were pretty much like a couple, and they actually had a sweet time together. This made Yuruka think back to when she was a kid, longing to become a princess. Couple atmosphere was reinforced some more when leaving the bookstore. They came across a couples-only competition for a toy set that Yuiga's sister really wants. And so Yuruka took his hand and they joined the competition. Gotta say, Yuruka really is smooth. Amazingly, despite being a pretend couple, they actually won, but not without the two misunderstanding the situation. The story so far makes us wish that these two should be together. Furuhashi is seen enjoying a nice warm shower at night. That is, until she decided to step on a weighing scale. The shock from seeing her actual weight was enough for a dramatic towel drop and, of course, a grueling scream. Did she actually gain that much? Of course, Furuhashi went to school feeling dejected. The poor girl wandered the hallways thinking about what she did that made her gain weight, and sure enough, it had something to do with her new friends. As she entered the room, both Yuraka and Ogata offered her snacks and udon, and not just the normal amount, but a huge portion of food. What's worse is that Furuhashi was right in the middle of eating when she realized that this was the reason. And to be honest, she still seems pretty thin. She asked her friends as to why they didn't gain any weight themselves, to which Yuraka said that it's because Ogata's nutrition goes to her large breasts. Wow, really? She herself had a fast metabolism. Nonetheless, it made Furuhashi determined to start a diet. But unfortunately, her friends were unintentionally not much help with that. Immediately after wanting to start a diet, Yuiga came in with cheese tarts that her sister had baked. And in the next few days, each one of her friends brought some tasty food for them to share, ranging from rare puddings, experimental udons, and even a whole cake. The poor Furuhashi all this time was trying to ignore all of that by focusing on her studies, though not to much avail, as Yuiga noticed her being unwell during a study session with just the two of them. Furuhashi tried to reason that she wasn't getting sick like the last time to concern Yuiga, but it didn't matter since her stomach let out a growl. She then promptly explained her situation to him, causing the latter to give her a candy, the only thing he had on him. Yuiga even stated that she doesn't look fat. Whatever the case, she was still pretty negative about the weight gain, even inviting Yuiga to feel her stomach himself, but the boy was distracted by her soft and smooth skin as he touched her. Aren't you supposed to be focusing on something else? He got so distracted that he muttered the word dangerous, making Furuhashi think he meant dangerously close to being fat. The confusion got corrected though, and on their way home, she brought tons of food for a late night snack, reasoning that she won't gain any weight since her brain would be using all of that sugar. Eventually, her weight did go back to normal. Ogata, on the other hand, was being harassed by Sakijo Sawako, president of the chemistry club, because she can't allow a talent like her to change courses in college. She even tried to blackmail Ogata with a picture of her and Yuiga, thinking she was in love. But when the genius denied being so, she decided to tail the two in their next study session at Ogata's house. The chem president then decided to see if she could make Ogata jealous by being close to Yuiga. Unfortunately, she didn't even stop writing. What's more unfortunate than that? Yuiga thought he's becoming popular, and a girl liked him. What ended up happening was the two got kicked out of the house because of their noise. Outside, Yuiga learned that the president only wanted to be friends with Ogata, though she hid it quite well. And her mission didn't fail, actually, as she noticed Ogata blushing when Yuiga patted her on the head. She even saw that apparently the genius was nervous earlier when she talked with Yuiga that she wrote a full page's worth of prime numbers. Since then, Sakijo joined the two whenever they studied in the library. Yuraka was also having her own dilemma. When she was rushing to school, she forgot to put on a bra. And what's more, they had a sports event on that day. What resulted was Yuraka wearing jackets and clutching her chest while playing. She was worried that Yuiga would see her, and as luck would have it, they were put in the opposite teams during a basketball game. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't even play right. and was even more so when her breasts touched Yuiga when they collided. This made the boy check up on her during halftime. And along with some encouraging words and a little bit of delusion from Uraka, she was again fired up. Her performance allowed her team to tie the game, but on the deciding shot, Yuiga jumped to block her. As they collided midair, her breasts again touched him, but it didn't matter anyway as the two tumbled to the ground with their breasts on his face. And with that, her worst fears were realized. The bright morning filled the mountainous scenery as the students arrived at their destination. Not a vacation, but actually Ikanose Academy's 3 days and 2 nights study camp. As expected, students have mixed reactions to the trip. Though the girls and others were excited about it, some of Yuiga's guy friends weren't entirely thrilled. Not Yuiga, though. In fact, he was preoccupied by the mountain Udo plant, and though he planned to pick some to bring home to his sister, he got dragged by a teacher before he could do so. Ogata herself was staring as the whole thing happened, which made Furuhashi ask why she was staring at Yuiga. But as per usual, Ogata doesn't even realize that she was doing so. Now that she was aware, however, she got super conscious about looking at him, and even talking with Yuiga. She tries to deny it even though she got icky when Yuiga was talking to other girls and tried to pass it off as having not enough calcium. Wow, is that how smart people think? I should think like that too, I guess. Ogata left for a vending machine to get some milk, but since she was short, she could not reach the buttons. Yuiga himself came to help her, but she immediately got a sour expression, didn't look at him, and excused herself to go outside. She eventually realized that she was being mean though, and as some sort of peace offering, recalled that Yuiga wanted to get some mountain Udo, and so she set out to pick some, not realizing that bad weather was brewing up above. By the time she got enough, the rain started to pour. She decided to head back. Unfortunately, she had already forgotten which way back to the building. Back in the dormitories, Yuiga was taking note of the sudden rain when Tsukijo approached him, asking about Ogata's whereabouts. Instantly, he remembered how she went out earlier, and so had set out looking in the forest near them. He was contemplating going back since Ogata wasn't stupid enough to go into the forests with this rain. But he stopped in his tracks when he saw her playing cards on a slope by the pathway. Ogata by this time was hunkered down by a tree, determined to stay put and wait out the rain to be rescued. Apart from thinking about the probability of rescue, she chided herself that she thought about Yuiga rescuing her. But little did she know he was there in person. Based on his appearance, he had been looking in the rain for quite some time, something Ogata blushed about. After giving him the mountain Udo, Yuiga asked her to come down. But due to her slipping, she dove forward from the slope straight into Yuiga's arms and lips. Yes, they did in fact kiss. The shock from what happened made the two ignore each other, particularly Ogata, who has not spoken with Yuiga since. It was still evident the morning after when the two were tasked with cleaning the girls' bathroom together, as punishment for leaving without permission. They did carry out their conversations again, but for an unfortunate reason, because Ogata had failed to hang the "Do Not Enter" sign outside. She hung it around her neck. The bath was suddenly filled with girls, undressing and preparing for a bath. Of course, Yuiga was frantic, since no amount of explanation would get him out of trouble if he was found in the girls' bath. Ogata promised to take care of it and made him hide in the sauna. Unfortunately, she got overwhelmed and made up a lame excuse. The result? Both Furuhashi and Uraka went inside the sauna, and they even made an Ogata strip and join them. Thinking quickly, Yuiga hid underneath the bench. But his one hope, Ogata couldn't think because now she was naked sitting above her crush. Fortunately, Uraka left early because it was too hot, and Furuhashi left with Ogata when Tsukijo made up something about a meteor shower because she knew Yuiga was hiding there. Seizing his chance, he exited the bath, but not without one last hit. As he opened the door going outside, Uraka was right there on the other side. And what's more, her towel got inexplicably thrown to the ground. But rather than be mad, she thought Yuiga was just her hallucination because she was madly in love with her. And she picked up her towel and entered the bath. That is some great Class A luck right there. The next morning, Yuiga and Ogata reconciled, agreeing that their kiss didn't count since it was an accident. It turned out that the kissing incident was not done causing trouble, as Yuiga got called to Kirisu-sensei's office about it. So it's Yuiga's turn for some bad luck. As Yuiga desperately tried to make his case to the already angry teacher, Furuhashi burst into the room in order to help her tutor as she heard something about inappropriate behavior. Unfortunately for him, her explanation was about when he touched her stomach in the library, and when he saw her underwear when she was sick. And as another stroke of bad luck, both Uraka and Ogata followed suit, each giving their excuse for an inappropriate run-in with Yuiga. Yuraka told Kirisu about them getting carried away in the swimming pool, while Ogata gave an excuse about him being in the girls' bath. As one could imagine, this didn't help Yuiga at all. But miraculously, it did. Not about him being in awkward situations, but at least Kirisu forgave him due to the concerns the girls showed. Still, she had said that he doesn't approve of him as a tutor, much less of him encouraging them to pursue dreams that are impossible to achieve. She further argued that she knew what was about to happen, since she had been there herself, though she didn't give much explanation for it. Rather than be down about what she had said, Yuiga instead grabbed his teacher's hand and found that she had bruises and wounds on it. This only meant that she was also looking for Ogata when she was lost in the forest, and why she also knew about the kiss. This prompted Yuiga to call his rather lonely teacher a good person. And although she brushed it off, Kirisu-sensei smiled as she looked at Yuiga in the company of the girls. At least the next news Yuiga received was a good one. During his reports to the headmaster, he got praised because the girls were steadily increasing their grades. As a result, the boy got a smile on his face that wasn't even erased even when they were in the classrooms. Naturally, his friends thought it was about him spending time with the girls, and they even theorized that he was secretly dating one of them. Trouble arose when one of them figured out that Yuiga had kissed one of the girls, and Yuraka heard it in the hallway. She was actually disheartened by what she heard, and she couldn't even concentrate during her one-on-one session with Yuiga. When she asked about the kissing, Yuiga couldn't say no, and as a result, Yuraka ran away, making an excuse that she had club practice when Yuiga knew she didn't. Oh, love really stings. Yuraka then sat by a tree with tears in her eyes as she admitted that it was her fault that she let it all drag out since middle school. Fortunately for her, the kind Furuhashi found her and talked to her about it. Though she disguised her love problems as her friend being in that situation, Furuhashi was able to figure out she was talking about her and Yuiga. Still, she encouraged Yuraka to go for it, and that she would support her friend 100%. Ogata arrived just in time to see the two hugging, but as Yuraka was leaving, she again heard rumors about Yuiga, though this time they were untrue. Instead of going to confess, Yuraka instead headed home. And actually, she wasn't the one being affected by the rumors. As Ogata heard these girlfriend rumors, she kept on dropping her books. And Furuhashi, who was good at reading people, immediately got the idea that she might be the one Yuiga kissed. Wow, you hit that one right on the money, Furuhashi. Actually, the entire thing bothered Yuraka that even her swimming teammates noticed it. And the same as the last time, they decided again to help her with that. Meanwhile, Yuiga approached Furuhashi if she had any idea about what had happened with Ogata and Yuraka. Not wanting to reveal that both had feelings for him, and not wanting to pick a side, Furuhashi instead told him to be aware of the girls' feelings. And so, after giving it much thought, Yuiga decided to not get too overly close to the girls, just in case they had a guy they liked. But as soon as he decided that, Yuraka showed up, with a shorter skirt and a more openly buttoned shirt. Stay strong, brother Yuiga. Following her friend's advice, she asked him if they could walk home together. Unfortunately, the walk home was awkward, with Yuraka trying to get close and Yuiga trying his best to be at a respectful distance. Their awkward walk led them to a stairway of a temple, and both decided to go pray, but for very different reasons. Though Yuiga prayed for academic success, Yuraka prayed for their romance to be successful. As luck would have it, the two were caught by the rain, and had no choice but to stay at a small house near the temple. Yuraka promptly fell asleep as soon as she told Yuiga that all she prayed for was romance with the guy she liked. At least, she was pretending to be asleep. It turned out that it was another technique taught to her by her swimming friends. It's been said before, but Yuraka is really smooth. Teach us, senpai. Soon enough, she felt something pat her head, and she felt licks all along her body. Thinking it was Yuiga, she woke up only to find it was cats that had taken shelter near them. Anyway, with the rain over, the two headed down the stairs, but Yuiga was actually distracted by none other than Yuraka's breasts. Again, stay strong, brother Yuiga. Yuraka noticed and asked him what was wrong. To his credit, he was actually honest about finding it hard not to stare at her. And to her credit, rather than being mad, she instead snuggled closer to him. But remembering what she had said, Yuiga remarked that she should only wear that in front of the guy she likes. Yuraka, knowing full well she's doing just that, smiled and agreed. They really would make a cute couple. Yuiga was still perplexed with how to understand a girl's heart, aren't we all? And so he keeps on coming back to Furuhashi for advice and lessons. Apparently, this had become a routine for the two, and this time it was Furuhashi becoming the master and having to teach. After Yuiga took notes from her advice, the two decided to head to class. But as Furuhashi was taking her steps, she suddenly tripped, right into the hands of Yuiga. From a passerby's perspective, they were hugging. That is exactly why Furuhashi was worried someone might see them, and as a stroke of bad luck, a person who liked Yuiga did. Who might that be? Well, none other than Ogata. She was on her way to school too, and she had an angry scowl on her face as she approached. Furuhashi got the idea that she was mad about what she saw, so she gave Yuiga a task: to hold hands with Ogata in the classroom as a sort of penance. Unfortunately, Furuhashi seemed to think that judging by her face, she was still pretty mad. And so, to make up for it, she pushed Yuiga into Ogata, thinking it would result in a hug as well. Spoiler alert, it didn't. What actually happened was Yuiga's face fell right into Ogata's chest. As one could imagine, both Yuiga and Furuhashi got scolded. It turned out Ogata's dad had broken her glasses, which is why she squinted and had a scowl on her face. She wasn't angry when she saw the two hugging, if she saw them at all. Meanwhile, a few days after the debacle, Yuiga was walking alone from school, studying as he did so. His concentration was broken, however, when he saw a cat stuck in a tree. Being the good person he was, he tried to get it down. And that's when Kirisu-sensei came across him and noticed what he was doing. She actually helped, and as the cat jumped off, she gracefully caught it. Unfortunately, her ankle got sprained when she landed on a rock. Yuiga had no choice but to help her get home. And although she was adamant she was fine in her apartment, a huge ruckus after she entered told otherwise. And so, Yuiga entered, and surprisingly, his teacher's apartment was very messy. Not something one would expect from a strict teacher. Nonetheless, since he helped, Kirisu-sensei offered him some coffee, and she even helped him study. But after they were done, Yuiga incidentally found her bra, prompting a shy response from Kirisu. Suddenly, the boy faced his teacher and told her he couldn't hold it any longer. He was apparently talking about the mess, and offered to clean it up. The apartment was immaculate after they did so, but Yuiga found trophies and pictures of Kirisu from her ballerina days. This was the reason for her views, saying that she would rather not have spent a lot of time with something like that regardless of her emotions. It would have been nice, according to her, if she could have focused on where her talents lied and not her dreams. Yuiga, on the other hand, didn't cross her teacher's views, but said that he'd regret it later helping those untalented than not doing anything. He left their apartment soon afterwards, and noted how his teacher was actually a nice person. Kirisu, on the other hand, was just nervous about bringing a man into her room for the first time. Naturally, Yuiga told Furuhashi about what had happened, and the girl, thinking of her friend's feelings, warned Yuiga not to tell anyone about it. She was so concerned about him spending time in a girl's apartment at night that she dragged him to a tree and pinned him to it, making it seem that it was a task from her about understanding girls. And as it is in any high school, those who saw this misinterpreted it further, thinking that it was Furuhashi and Yuiga that was dating. Her classmates pestered her about it, and unfortunately, Yuiga didn't do much to stop the rumor when he had said they had a special relationship when asked about it, and picked her up from their room. Nonetheless, her classmates, headed by Kashima, decided to spy on the two in order to determine whether or not he was a suitable boyfriend. But when they saw that they were certainly just studying, the spying ended prematurely. And what's more, they even ended up studying too. Well, that's the end of that rumor. Yuiga had something he was proud to show off today, that being a brand new cell phone. Actually, his mother won it from a draw and the entire family used it. But still, he was happy to have something that he'll help with his studying. Most kids don't even think their phone was made for studying. His enthusiasm didn't do him much good though, as apparently he was helpless when it came to technology. But no need to panic, as Yuraka was there to assist the suddenly depressed Yuiga. The latter asked to search for effective study methods, and what Yuraka found was something of interest. Apparently, studying while in the bathtub boosts its effectiveness. And so each member of their study group went home with an idea to try. Yuiga himself indulged in the relaxing idea, and since he didn't learn his lesson, or even just read the manual, he was using the phone while in the tub. Water and phones don't mix well, you know. As expected, what followed was a series of embarrassing moments involving each of his friends. First off, when he tried using the search engine of his phone, he accidentally texted Furuhashi, who was in the bath by herself. She ended up being shy about texting a boy while in a bath, and she even had thoughts about Yuiga, to which she chastised herself as she was really supportive of Yuraka and Ogata. The next time Yuiga tried using his phone, he instead called Ogata. Unexpectedly, her father picked up at first and tried to intimidate and thank Yuiga at the same time. Confusing, right? Nevertheless, when Ogata took the phone, she got too flustered when they both realized they were talking over the phone naked. And going 3 for 3, while using voice command, Yuiga accidentally called Yuraka as well. But this time, when Yuraka tried to put the call on speaker, she instead opened the video call. Uh-oh. As one could imagine, the two got embarrassed by the blunder. And what's worse, Yuiga's phone fell into the water because of that. Nonetheless, the group continued on with their studies. Uraka in particular was getting good at her works, something which Yuiga noted. It turned out that her competition was getting closer, so Yuiga bade his friend to do her best. Naturally, Uraka was always so fired up, but as she went about her routine, her teammates reminded her to pace herself properly. It seemed that she had trouble taking care of herself, but actually she was worried about her performance in both fields, which led to her studying late at night even though she was dead tired. Next morning, as Yuiga and Uraka were walking to the school, the former noticed the latter was unwell and clearly had trouble walking. Suddenly, the poor girl collapsed, and Yuiga had to take her to the infirmary. There, he praised Uraka for all the effort she had put in, and noted that whoever she liked must be one lucky guy. Only if you knew. When she unexpectedly stirred in her sleep, Yuiga leaned forward to check on her. However, she reached out and hugged the boy, who got frozen in place all of a sudden. It would have been a sweet moment, but Uraka's swimming team entered the room, and Yuiga again had no choice but to hide under the bed. What is it with you and hiding? While there, Yuiga finally learned the truth from one of Uraka's friends, that he was the boy she liked. Of course, it came as a shock to him, and although he didn't really know what to do about it, he found himself spending time with Uraka, who wanted to thank him for bringing her to the nurse earlier. The two had a nice time, considering the circumstances, as they went out to eat ramen. On the way home, though, as Uraka asked something about Yuiga being taken, the boy unintentionally replied a harsh comment about not having time for that. And seeing her reaction, he decided to ask if he was the one she liked. Uraka turned back to look at him, and with a face you couldn't tell was even lying, told him he wasn't. Yuiga was walking by himself studying when again he came across Kirisu-sensei, but this time she was sitting outside her apartment, even though it was during a hot day, mind you. Nonetheless, Yuiga tried to pass through while greeting the teacher, but she held on to him as he went. The next thing, Yuiga got dragged again into her apartment, which by this time was again dirty. What's more, there was a certain visitor that scared the living hell out of the teacher, a cockroach. Just seeing the critter made the teacher jump into Yuiga's arm, whose in turn was getting squashed by the two big things on her chest. Perhaps she should have cleaned the place herself, but she was too afraid of the little bug, and so Yuiga took the task upon himself again. It took no time at all, but when he tried to leave, the still scared Kirisu asked him to stay, since the cockroach escaped earlier and is still hiding. The teacher said she'll do anything for it. And what did Yuiga decide to go with? Studying, of course. It took them until nighttime again, and this time, Kirisu-sensei offered Yuiga dinner, saying that she already ordered the food. Almost immediately, the doorbell rang, and being polite, Yuiga went to answer it, only to see Ogata standing outside with the delivery. Now, he was put in another precarious situation. As Ogata joined them for dinner, he could feel the tension in the air. Ogata wanted him to tell her what was going on, and Kirisu didn't want him to do so, since it was embarrassing. Yuiga instead asked them all to play Ogata's card game, hoping it would make the atmosphere change into a friendlier one. Unfortunately, it didn't, partly because Kirisu-sensei kept winning, and Ogata sucked at the game. Regardless, Yuiga took the chance to explain that the teacher was actually kind and caring when she left to get something. Ogata seemed to not see it, but when she saw the teacher paralyzed with fear by the cockroach, or Mr. Taro, as Ogata called it, she smacked it with a piece of paper, almost nonchalantly. As the two students headed home, Ogata thanked Yuiga because without him, she might not have thought about her old tutor's feelings too. A few days later, Yuiga's mom got too sick for work. Being the good kid that he is, he made her rest and took her shift to help her out. Only that his mom worked in a shop that's not well suited for men, the Luxure Jelly, a lingerie underwear shop. A recipe for trouble, no doubt. Still, he went through with it. And when his coworker saw how embarrassed he was, she made him wear the store mascot. But now he was embarrassed for a whole other reason. Still, it could be worse. At least no one he knew was entering the shop. At least that's what he hoped. No sooner had he thought about it that Yuruka and Ogata entered the shop. And since his coworker left because her daughter got too sick, he was the only employee left. And so, he was the one who helped measure Ogata's chest and pick out an underwear set for Yuruka that she asked a third-year boy would like. And it was still not over. After they left, Kirisu-sensei actually stuck in one of the dressing rooms, called to him for help unhooking her bra. And of course, since she didn't know he was a guy, she just let the bra fall from her breast to the ground, right in front of the mascot. But wait, there's more! It was Furuhashi's turn to make an entrance, as she felt embarrassed shopping with Yuruka and Ogata because of how well endowed they were. She asked the mascot for different sizes, hoping that her chest size grew. And that became a source of embarrassment, as kudos to her, she was the only one who discovered that it was Yuiga in the mascot when she went out of the dressing room. When his coworker returned just in time to take off the mascot head, Furuhashi went outside at the same time. You may recognize her dejected face from all the memes about it. Summertime has arrived. But rather than spending time with beach vacations and relaxing, students that prepared for entrance exams are using the opportunity to study. The same goes for Yuiga, who enrolled himself in a prep school with the school paying for his expenses due to his tutoring performance and the girls' high end-of-term grades. His hard work is finally paying off. But right before class started, he was approached by a small purple-haired girl who Yuiga thought was too young for the class. Still, she said her seat was right next to him and politely asked to move a little so she could sit. Yuiga thought she was a middle schooler who got into the wrong room, but when he asked her about it, she got mad and showed her ID. It turned out that Kominami Asumi, 19, was in fact Yuiga's senior from Ikanose Academy. She failed during her first year of trying to get into med school and is now in her second year of reviews. Anyway, the class began, and even though Yuiga was a sucker for studying, he fell behind in the lessons. He quickly found that prep schools weren't easy to handle, and they don't miraculously boost your grades by just attending. By break time, he was drained. Lucky for him, Kominami lent her some notes to copy. He even gave her some advice about studying in situations like that. Despite them getting off on the wrong foot earlier, she was still kind enough to offer help. And with that, Yuiga was able to get through the day. At dismissal time, however, Kominami had already left. The young man would have wanted to say thanks, but it appeared that the opportunity had already passed. Walking without thinking, he suddenly realized he had no idea which way the station was, or where he was. And suddenly, two big guys appeared out of nowhere, offering to bring him to where he really wanted. Thankfully, it wasn't a kidnapping scam, but rather, he got dragged into a maid cafe. Regardless, Yuiga was still uncomfortable with all the girls dressed as cute maids tending to him, and more so because it costs money. He rushed towards the exit, but at the same time, one of the maids who was late entered, and it was none other than Kominami. An otherwise shocking surprise for the two, but it explained Kominami's sudden disappearance from before. It was revealed that Kominami was working part-time to put herself through med school and was actually popular in the cafe. But just like the girls he tutored, Kominami was actually bad at science. And so, Yuiga actually stayed and helped her study. He even came back the next day to do it again, at the request of Kominami's workmates. Unfortunately, on his way home, he stumbled upon her dad. And when Kominami ran after him in her maid outfit because he left his train pass, Yuiga got put into an awkward situation. Kominami's dad was a doctor, and a nice person at that, but he argued with his daughter about pursuing medicine again. Yuiga, just like what he did for the girls, supported Kominami's decision and said no one will ever be sure you can't do it if they tried. If you're wondering why Yuiga gave his opinion like that, it's because they lied that he was her boyfriend to get out of the whole maid outfit situation. And after some time, it was the girls' turn to meet Kominami when all of them, including Yuiga, saw each other in a restaurant. Group got more time to spend together too, as the girls also enrolled in the prep school Yuiga and Kominami were in. Yuiga explained that the girls were under his tutelage and was actually proud of them that they enrolled in the school themselves. Unfortunately, they too also found it hard during their first day. But like what she did for Yuiga, Kominami also helped. Just as they're about to go home though, rain started to pour, and they decided to stay at Kominami's house first to wait it out. Everyone got wet though, and Yuiga was able to see Yuruka wearing the underwear he had picked, much to their embarrassment. Furuhashi said her thanks to Kominami's father, and their topic moved towards Yuiga, which is exactly how she found out that apparently he was her daughter's boyfriend. She confronted him about it, but fortunately, Kominami herself cleared the confusion up. But based on her reactions, Kominami theorized that maybe Furuhashi had feelings for Yuiga. The teachers are all having a night out, but as per usual, Kirisu-sensei declined her fellow colleagues' offer to visit another club. All the better too, since her male workmates were getting a little too friendly. One even imagined her living an immaculately clean and posh life. On her way home, she contemplated how these kinds of scenes were never in her comfort zone. She was preoccupied about that until she saw Yuiga hanging out at the entrance of a maid cafe. She grabbed her student's shoulder, who was deep in conversation with one of the cafe's employees, and asked him what he was doing there. Yuiga was about to be in trouble when Koninami showed up and promptly explained the situation. She was surprised to see her old teacher and in fact was being too playful when Kiru-sensei questioned her working there, or even about her continued goal of becoming a doctor. Still, the teacher was more concerned about getting Yuiga out of the cafe and from the neighborhood in general. And Kominami, being a teaser that she was, grabbed a hold of Yuiga and said perhaps Kirisu doesn't like his choice of a girlfriend. Yep, Kominami still referred to herself as Yuiga's girlfriend. As a result, Kirisu-sensei grabbed his other arm, and so Yuiga became the rope in their tug of war. Poor guy. He only wanted to study, but their ruckus caused more trouble than intended. Kirisu-sensei suddenly tripped and she fell back on an employee, spraining the latter's ankle. Now short-handed, Kominami took it upon herself to appoint Kirisu-sensei as a temporary help, which of course meant she had to wear a maid outfit. She even made her practice greeting her master/customer with Yuiga, only to make her clean and not interact with customers much. Yuiga really got the short end of the stick today. But no matter, at least he got to see Kirisu being beautiful in that outfit. But of course, cleaning was not Kirisu's strong suit, and within minutes, she tripped and Yuiga ended up cleaning the mess after all. Nonetheless, the night was successful and the crew celebrated with drinks. It was here that Kominami admitted the great impact Kirisu had on her life. Although she was always against her dreams, the teacher became the reason for her rebelling against what people determined were for her or not for her. They never got a chance to praise Kirisu themselves though, as she got drunk after drinking just one sip of alcohol by mistake. On the way home, Yuiga had to carry Kirisu on his back, who by this time was the opposite of usual self, praising every student she had, especially Yuiga. A few days later, Kirisu found that she had no clothes for work. Problem since she only wears jumpsuits while at home. She rummaged through her closet and dreaded what her only available clothes were, her old Ikanose uniform. Now embarrassed looking like a high schooler, she was pretty confident that no one she knew would see her at school since it was summertime. Unfortunately, due to her appearance, she got questioned by the police as she got into her car. Good thing that Yuiga happened to see them and got her out of trouble. And he even guessed right why the teacher was wearing her old clothes. And so, Kirisu gave him a ride to school, though she was pretty hard on the accelerator, wanting to have a quick in and out at school to avoid embarrassment. With the help of Yuiga, she actually succeeded in doing so. But as a result from her driving earlier, her car had an empty tank, forcing her to walk home. As they did so, Yuiga noticed she was looking longingly at a group of students gathered around an ice cream shop, prompting him to ask about her high school life. She revealed that she didn't have enough time to enjoy going out because she was focused on figure skating. And so Yuiga made her wait by the bench while he grabbed them each a cone of ice cream. The two had a friendly time together, that is, until they saw Furuhashi and Ogata buying as well. The two immediately jumped behind the bench and into the bushes, determined to wait them out. Unfortunately, their friends sat right where they did and proceeded to talk. It was bad enough that Yuiga and Kirisu were having a hard time staying silent. First, the teacher broke a twig, and moments later, when they snuggled closer to hide, she let out a scream when the ice cream melted on her neck. Naturally, Furuhashi went to check out the noise, but in a blur, Yuiga grabbed Kirisu and made it seem like they were kissing. Whatever the case, it was effective in making Furuhashi and Ogata leave. For this particular study session, Yuruka and Yuiga were alone, but unlike the past times they were together, it had become so awkward that they couldn't even talk. So of course, the two ran to the friend who knew about everything, Furuhashi. Even Yuiga was using the whole "my friend is in this situation" when describing him and Yuruka. It's kinda cute how both Yuiga and Yuruka use the same excuses. Their awkwardness boils down to when Yuiga asked if he was the guy that she liked, and Yuruka denied it. Despite not wanting to take a side, Furuhashi advised the two of them to meet and talk it out. Well, more like she advised their friends. And the two actually pulled through with it. Yuiga and Yuruka sat down by a bench and decided to talk it out. But actually, there wasn't much talking going on, and so the two decided to text Furuhashi simultaneously, seeking help for their friend that followed her advice. Luckily, Furuhashi anticipated that things would go south, and in fact went in disguise to spy on them. As they texted her, she was literally sitting right behind them. She almost got caught too, but since her disguise involved patting her bra, the two never figured out it was actually her. But try as she might, she couldn't get the two to talk, and whatever topic she suggested, they would fall short of talking again. Right as the two were near being burnt out from the awkwardness, and Furuhashi being unable to help, Yuiga complimented Yuruka, telling her she looked cute in her ponytail. On an unrelated note, Furuhashi also wore a ponytail the next day when Yuiga came to thank her. Since that's what she wanted too, they began to talk again, just like they did before. And right in time too, as Yuruka's summer tournament was right around the corner. Despite having summer classes, Yuiga was there to support his friend. And being the star athlete that she was, Yuruka shined throughout the swimming match. Unfortunately, their team got disqualified when a second-year member made a false start. But rather than be mad about it, Yuruka and the other third years were actually very nice about it. Yuruka herself was actually very strong about the whole thing, despite it being her last tournament. As a concerned Yuiga asked, she said that she will do everything possible first before crying. But she said if he really wanted to cheer her up, he should hang out with her tonight. Not what you're thinking. The two made their way and snuck into their old middle school and reminisced about the time they were there. Memories started to pour in, how the two were seatmates and how Yuruka noticed Yuiga day after day, and how the cute girl practiced saying his name in the mirror until she could talk to him. Anyway, they made their way to the pool and relaxed as they talked again. It seemed that the romantic tension was still there. Yuiga remembered that she denied being in love with him, and so, being the nice guy that he was, asked Yuruka to practice confessing with him, so that it'll go smoothly for the guy she likes. Wow, how dense. Yuruka somehow agreed, but only on the condition that he call her by her first name. Right then and there, he called her Yuruka, and she confessed, but it didn't matter since they weren't really speaking with all their heart. The two tumbled into the pool, and when Yuiga called Yuruka by her first name, she couldn't help but blush and hide underwater. The festival is here, and everyone in town was excited to go out and visit the festival stalls. The same goes for Yuiga and his family, though his mother is quite guilty that he had to go, despite his studying. But the boy settled his mother's worries, and soon enough, the family stumbled upon Yuruka and Furuhashi, who were both wearing traditional Japanese kimonos. Furuhashi then asked whether or not they looked good, hoping Yuiga would praise Yuruka some more, and he did, though he noted that Furuhashi looked natural in the kimonos. Not that it bothered Yuruka, though. It was enough for her to hear that he thought she was beautiful. When Yuiga's mother decided to let him go with the friends, Furuhashi also decided to play fairy godmother again, pretending to have gone back for something in order to leave her friends alone. They didn't have enough chances to develop into more than friends, though. Yuruka and Yuiga spent a nice time visiting the stalls, but when they saw how Ogata and her father's udon stalls were getting swarmed with customers, they decided to help. Yuruka helped Ogata's father in the kitchen, and Yuiga joined Ogata in the deliveries. This time it was Ogata's turn to spend time with Yuiga. Meanwhile, all this time, Furuhashi was alone eating tokiyaki, looking up at the mesmerizing night sky in the process. Little by little, the delivery was finally done, and as Ogata went ahead, Yuiga saw something very peculiar happening at one of the stalls. Apparently, a familiar pin-haired lady wearing a mask was killing it in the shooting games, winning every prize there was. Of course, Yuiga went to confront his teacher, but due to embarrassment, she ran and slipped. Not only did she break her mask, her knee got scraped too. So Yuiga was left with no choice but to give a piggyback ride, again, mind you, for his teacher to the infirmary. As they entered the medic station, surprisingly it was Kominami and her father that were heading the medics. And since the two were very busy on their own, Yuiga was tasked to help and assist, since he was technically Kominami's boyfriend. His first patient, Kirisu-sensei, unfortunately made weird sounds when being treated. It was getting late, and the festival had died down. Remember Furuhashi? Yep, she was still there. Apparently, the girl had been too mesmerized by the stars and had forgotten the time. She rushed down the stairs only to see a crying child who was lost. Being a good person, she instead made sure the child got home, regardless of her maybe missing the last train. Yuiga, too, was late going home. After receiving thanks from his supposed father-in-law, he also found a child who got lost. Coincidentally, that child and the one Furuhashi helped were sisters, and so the two heroes met at the station, with them both missing the last train because they helped the kids. They decided to wait for a taxi, and even tried to walk to a main street to find more transport. But when Furuhashi's feet were getting sore from walking on sandals, they thought it was better to check into an inn. Naturally, a high school boy and girl checking into an inn was suspicious at best, so the two disguised themselves as brother and sister when they were informed only one room was left. What made it even more awkward was that the room only had one futon. The innkeeper was sorry for the lack of futons, but determined it was all right since they were siblings. Perhaps she was testing their disguise? As expected, the two were extremely awkward about the whole thing. It reached the boiling point when their backs touched underneath the blanket. Wanting to lift the awkwardness, Yuiga tried to think of a topic, but when he looked out the window, he was so amazed by the night sky that he immediately called Furuhashi's attention. The two spent their time stargazing, and Furuhashi recounted her favorite book from her mother, who had perhaps passed away due to an illness. Her mother used to say that she wasn't really gone, just up in the stars, much like the ones in her book. So that's why Furuhashi was so interested in astrology. After sharing cherished memories, they fell asleep, snuggled close like lovers. Next morning on the train, awkwardness lingered. Throughout the ride, unspoken words filled the air, but warmth and affection remained. Hearts raced when their eyes met. As the journey ended, Yuiga and Furuhashi bid each other farewell, feeling both relief and reluctance. Their stargazing adventure had changed something between them. While the future was uncertain, they cherished the magical night they shared. Walking away in opposite directions, they stole glances back, silently hoping to explore their feelings revealed by the stars. The bliss of the night accompanied Nariyuki as he finished his quota of tutor duties. He assigned the three girls different kinds of homework to hone each of them in the areas that they were having difficulty with. He placed his pen on the table and thought of what he could do to enhance Furuhashi's comprehension in mathematics. He remembered her explaining about getting the gist of the math problems as he deemed her progressing a lot at solving equations. He then went over to Ogata's situation and remembered how she explained about her progress in identifying the feelings of each character in the story she was analyzing yesterday. Then he thought that it was best for Takimoto to have more readings to enhance her skills efficiently. He's really a dedicated tutor. On the next day, Ogata approached the receptionist at school so she could view her practice exam results. Her face shouted anxiousness and false confidence about the results that she would see. She then sat up straight, sweat dripping down her face as she pulled the paper out of the envelope. She was ready to see straight A grades until all she could find were straight E in the paper. Her eyes opened wide, a faint expression on her face that told her how doomed she was. A sound of a long E mark teased her while she hovered her eyes up and down, rechecking if she saw the letters correctly. Eventually, she rushed to the room where Asumi, Furuhashi, and Takimoto were doing their school tasks. Prior to her arrival, the three girls in the room randomly arrived at the topic of bra cup sizes, which was brought up by Takimoto's boob fantasies after talking about a beach vacation. The further they indulged in the topic, Furuhashi became conscious of her cup size. Before they knew it, they were already talking about Ogata's cup size too. Highly invested in the topic, the three of them proclaimed their bets on Takimoto's cup size. And perfectly on time, Ogata arrived with a dispirited face. The room went silent from her arrival as they were waiting for Ogata to spill the news on her whereabouts. On cue, she instantly told them the E marks she got that were misinterpreted by the girls. With half-disappointed eyes, Takimoto thought about the regression of Ogata's cup size from F to E. Ultimately, the three of them misconstrued her words and consoled her the wrong way. To make it worse, Ogata asked the three of them about their marks referring to their practice results, and since they believed she was pertaining to the cup sizes, Asumi and Takimoto openly spoke of their cup sizes, and when it was Furuhashi's time to speak, the misunderstanding came to an end. Eventually, they consoled her but instilled in her that Nariyuki was a boob fiend, like all other guys based on Asumi's words a while back. So, when it was time for Nariyuki's tutoring session, with Takimoto at her family's restaurant, her mind kept revolving around the curiosity of whether Nariyuki was indeed a boob fiend. While Nariyuki discussed metaphors, she seemed extremely disturbed. She jolted at the moment when Nariyuki asked her if she was still listening. She immediately cupped her face as she blushed at the disturbing ideas she was having. Nariyuki then asked her if she was hanging up by her practice exam results and asked if it was about a D or E grades, but Ogata misinterpreted the statement. With mixed emotions, she forced her chest towards him with the belief that Nariyuki wanted to cup her breasts. She even asked Nariyuki if she allowed him to, would he be happy. The misunderstanding is on another level. This only resulted in the misinterpretation of interests that was seen by her father, who was approaching them to offer a good meal. They were both sent out of the restaurant because of this, and Nariyuki was severely scolded after clearing the misunderstandings they had. The next day, Asumi, the three girls, and Nariyuki studied mathematics while Nariyuki tutored them on specific subjects. And after the study time, they decided to take a nice hot bath when the three girls mistook the men's public bath for females. Nariyuki entered the bath and even shared shampoo with Furuhashi until they both realized the situation. They both jolted in surprise when Nariyuki's lower cover slipped off in front of Takimoto and Ogata. Soon later, the girls excused themselves so they could transfer to the right bath. However, trouble was on the way. Nariyuki's guy friends entered the public bath and shared about the peephole they were making to peek through the girls' public bath. The girls submerged themselves under the water and tried to escape. They still had to go through the hurdle of being unfound while the guy friend asked questions about Nariyuki's bed among the girls. Finally, the girls were able to leave unseen. The embarrassment would have ended, however, as Nariyuki exited the bath in worry of the girls, he encountered a cup A bra fallen on the floor. So, he met the girls as they offered their apology drink to him. He declined the offer and presented to them a plastic bag and told Furuhashi that she left her undergarments. She blushed in embarrassment at the thought that he assumed that it was her cup size, perceiving that she had the smallest cup size among the three of them. A no-class day came when a problem in Asumi's house cleaning services arose. Requests from customers rushed in. Unfortunately, they were short-staffed at the moment, so while Nariyuki was doing some work, he was approached by one of the cleaners to work with Asumi in accomplishing some requests from customers for the day. He agreed with them as he was also going to be paid for the service. Hence, the two of them got along the road, Asumi driving the motorcycle and Nariyuki as her passenger prince. She drove fiercely, prepared to clean and do her job for the day. She apologized to Nariyuki for the inconvenience that her workmates pressed upon him, but he assured her that he was fine and stated that the fact that he also benefited from this job. As soon as they arrived at their first house, Asumi rang the doorbell, and when the door opened, it presented Nariyuki's classroom advisor, Miss Kurisu, who was extremely defensive of her reputation as a teacher. She forced the door to close, but Asumi poured her strength to pull the door open. Miss Kurisu then paid for the service without letting Nariyuki and Asumi inside a room. But Asumi did not allow such an act as it insulted her profession in cleaning, so she attempted to barge in. But Miss Kurisu pulled Nariyuki in instead. Nariyuki cleaned the room in 30 minutes before Miss Kurisu allowed Asumi to come in. The place was 100% free of dust and mess as soon as Asumi entered, so this outraged her more. Nariyuki tried to console Asumi for her feelings and persuaded her to move on to the next customer instead. Without further ado, they drove to the next house, and with lesser luck, they arrived at Takimoto's house as her mother was sick and could not tend to the house. As soon as Takimoto opened the door, she was surprised by Asumi and Nariyuki's presence. The two immediately went inside the house only to be served dinner and a clean kitchen that were all done by Takimoto. While eating, Asumi raged again to complain about not having to do any work while getting paid. Takimoto explained that it was her adrenaline that pushed her to clean and cook due to being pressured by their presence. Nariyuki pleaded with Asumi that perhaps the third house would be the house that she could clean. However, as they reached the third house, they found out that it was Furuhashi's residence. Such coincidence of events. Both parties were shocked. Still, Furuhashi openly described the situation in her kitchen to Asumi and only realized what she did when she saw Nariyuki's face of confusion. She perceived his facial expression as a man's perspective of a feminine girl who could not even cook or clean. And recalling the messy kitchen she had, she didn't want Nariyuki to see it. So she handed the cleaning payment without letting them in, and even bowed down to apologize for the inconvenience of coming all the way to her home. Asumi wanted to barge in and clean her house to no longer suppress her frustrations about her pride as a professional cleaner. However, Furuhashi managed to keep them out of the house for a while and ordered cold noodles from Ogata's restaurant. The turn of events was unexpected for Nariyuki and Asumi, and upon going home, Asumi cried and sulked at the thought of the customers hurting her pride. Nariyuki consoled her and informed her that he would be going the opposite way. But Asumi reached for his shirt to plead for him to let her clean his house instead. She tended to his younger siblings and him after she cleaned the house. You did a splendid job, Asumi. The next day, Miss Kurisu scolded Furuhashi for napping in class when a situation came up for her the next day. While she made her test for tomorrow, her laptop shut down without saving the test she was making. Hence, she was sleep-deprived the day after and was trying not to nap during the exams. She wanted to keep her reputation as a good teacher and refused to embarrass herself in front of the class, given that she scolded Furuhashi yesterday for napping. An assembly was held after classes, and Miss Kurisu was one of the teachers to sit on stage during the event. She was having a hard time keeping herself awake. Just as she was about to doze off, Nariyuki sneezed loudly, waking her system. Upon arriving at her apartment, she lost her key and encountered Nariyuki in the middle of her search for the key somewhere. They both spent hours looking for the key when it was just inside Miss Kurisu's bag. Nariyuki sent Miss Kurisu home, however, she fell asleep at her entrance and made a loud sound that concerned Nariyuki. He checked her apartment and saw that his advisor had fallen asleep on the floor. He asked for dispensation as he carried her in his arms so he could put Miss Kurisu to bed, and she could rest properly. One night, Ogata checked herself in the mirror and realized that her bangs had grown quite long, so she impulsively decided to cut a little portion of it. But during the most crucial part of it, her father barged into the room. Accidentally, she cut her bangs too short, making her look like a cutesy young doll version of herself. The next day, she walked to school when Furuhashi and Takimoto found her at a distance. They greeted each other and were about to approach Ogata when awe and confusion filled their eyes. They indulged in her charming look as soon as she faced them. Silence took over for seconds when Furuhashi asked about Ogata's bangs and complimented that it suits her. Suddenly, Nariyuki arrived at their area and greeted them. When he was about to greet Ogata, she turned her head away from him, avoided his face, and quickly rushed away from them, which baffled Nariyuki. Arriving at school, she immediately went into the comfort room to fix her dilemma. Then, someone busted the door and greeted her. Sekijo, her best friend, came in to discuss her new hairstyle for the new semester. Sekijo halted her speech when she saw Ogata's new hair and look, believing that Ogata also changed her look for her. Sekijo's reaction to express her perception only led Ogata to believe that her hair did not suit her well. Hence, during her tutoring sessions with the two girls and Nariyuki, she wore a weird Japanese mask. Nariyuki was worried about Ogata hiding her face and perceived that perhaps she hated him. Unexpectedly, Furuhashi took off Ogata's mask, which panicked Ogata, causing her to desperately cover her face in front of Nariyuki. However, upon seeing her uncovered face, Nariyuki failed to notice her new bangs. The girls screamed in disbelief when they saw Ogata's dismayed expression. Nariyuki panicked to guess what changes he could immediately find out about Ogata so he would not invalidate her efforts to even hide it from him. And again, he was too dense to point out the answer and had to go home with Ogata and console her. As they walked home, Nariyuki tried to catch up to Ogata's pace. He stopped her from walking by calling her by her first name. She went to a stop and blushed, still not looking back at Nariyuki. Nariyuki came near and confronted her. He wanted to try for the last time and guess. Ogata knew that even if he could even guess any change, she would not be happy about it because it just showed how uninterested he was. Unexpectedly, Nariyuki told her that she now had more facial expressions, and that made him feel like she trusted him and his tutoring skills. She blushed while taken aback and smiled to agree with him anyway. On the next day, Tsukijo noticed Ogata's overly worn-out pencil case and suggested her to buy a new one tomorrow. Ogata agreed but was troubled by the choices of styles to choose from. Since Sekijo wants to hang out with her, she suggests to come with her. Excitedly, they plan out the activities with them for tomorrow. The day came for them to buy the pencil case, and Sekijo was enormously ecstatic to perform her plans when she saw Nariyuki from behind. She knew how Ogata liked him, so with a little show of dismay, she crumpled her list of plans and called Nariyuki to accompany Ogata instead. However, Nariyuki found out last night about Sekijo's excitement for today through her tweets, which caused her to explain to him how Ogata impacted her confidence greatly, which she was thankful for. Without noticing, Ogata was actually just behind her when she confessed about liking her. Ogata complimented her for letting her feel good about influencing others when Ogata revealed her fear that Sekijo was mad at her. Panicky, Sekijo expressed her want to accompany her, but ended up falling over Ogata, cupping her breast accidentally, as she overwhelmed Nariyuki, presenting her bosoms accidentally too. That's some awkward situation they're in there. In broad daylight, Sejiko showed off her new look for the new semester as she flaunted her pigtails in front of Ogata. Afterwards, Ogata transferred to the library later on for her tutor sessions, but was only with the girls. Curious about new looks, she asked about the girls who changed their hairstyles every new semester to have a great new start of the semester. She contemplated Furuhashi's suggestion of going to the salon instead of cutting her own hair. Eventually, Furuhashi's words stayed inside Ogata's mind until she could no longer stand the thought, and tried going to the salon for a change of a hairstyle as per Furuhashi's suggestion. Hence, she scheduled her tutoring sessions with Nariyuki in the late afternoon so she could stop by the salon to try a new thing for herself. Also, partly to somehow low-key impress Nariyuki through a change she reluctantly pursued. A few hours later, Nariyuki concerned himself about his scheduled tutor with Ogata, but she seemed to be arriving later than the time they planned, so he texted her. However, almost right on time, the transformed Ogata walked towards Nariyuki with her lengthy hair extensions, blue cleavage dress, heels, and sparkly contact lenses. Nariyuki slightly jolted at the sight of a young, beautiful lady who was about to sit beside him. He panicked, heart beating too fast, and turned his back on the girl whom he failed to notice was Ogata. Can't blame him for failing to recognize her. Ogata's transformation is unrecognizable indeed. His eyes were mesmerized by the sight of the pretty girl when Ogata spoke to him like she always did. He panicked even more and tried to divert his attention to his phone to text Ogata to come to his aid already so he could concentrate on better things. The day ended with a gist of worry in Nariyuki's eyes as he walked home. He wondered where Ogata was and why she had not shown up for their tutoring sessions. Also, he felt flustered and awkward to be walking with the beautiful girl from earlier and was curious if she was following him by chance. While he was disturbed by his thoughts, Ogata spoke. He also threw himself to the fence when he heard the girl who was actually Ogata offer him to come to her house. He scolded her for not respecting herself by inviting a guy over to their house, but he still agreed for the reason to tell her parents to teach her proper manners. Eventually, all feelings and daydreams took off from his mind when he sat in front of Ogata's father in their udon restaurant. He realized that the girl was definitely Ogata, and even reflected on her situation to the changelings that they were discussing earlier. The next day, Ogata and Furuhashi were about to throw some trash when they saw Nariyuki and Takimoto together at a secluded area at the back of their classroom. Furuhashi maliciously thought of a love confession when a sudden English statement came out of Takimoto's mouth, who was in a tutoring session with Nariyuki on the English language. Flashback to the previous morning's conversation between Nariyuki and Takimoto while they were in the middle of their tutoring session on the English language. Nariyuki commended her for improving a lot in grammar. However, she needed more practice and fluency. Hence, an idea came into his mind, and he told Takimoto to speak English with him throughout the day. The first person to speak in Japanese would buy food for the other, and so Takimoto agreed. Afterwards, the challenge began, and they continued to speak in English until a dog approached Takimoto. An incident happened that caused Nariyuki to express his defeat by saying, "I give up," which she thought was the cue to speak in Japanese again. Clearly, Takimoto lost the game, and however, Nariyuki was still the one who bought the food for them. Consequently, Takimoto decided to stay outside the convenience store to wait for Nariyuki when a group of 2 Englishmen came up to her to ask for directions. It was supposed to be fine, but they spoke in English. This flustered Takimoto even more despite wanting to help them. So she tried to speak in English to give them directions and got complimented instead on her appearance. Nariyuki came up to them to protect Takimoto, but only stuttered in English the same way as she did a while back. Eventually, the Englishmen left them alone after they thought he was her boyfriend. Takimoto's heart pumped so hard because Nariyuki accidentally told the guys that she was his precious girlfriend instead of his precious study mate. And because it felt overwhelming, her athletic side compensated as she warmed up before sprinting away. Furuhashi went to Nariyuki's house to have her tutoring session. It was already nighttime when they had to end the session with mathematics on cubic equations and slopes. They bid their farewells as Nariyuki sent her off. Suddenly, Nariyuki remembered his present for Furuhashi's birthday. Furuhashi corrected him that it was supposed to be tomorrow. He scratched his head in embarrassment. Nonetheless, he shyly handed the bag while she felt quite nice about him giving her a gift unexpectedly, as it was her first time receiving something from a guy. Eventually, she thanks him before leaving. What she did not know was that she would feel the complexity of what she was supposed to feel after knowing what his present was. Before she knew it, a big bra was in front of her. She troubled herself on how to react to the present, as it seemed too aggressive for a guy to give a girl something like that. Hours ago in Nariyuki's house, his sister asked their mom about the thing she told her mom to buy that morning, and it was actually the bra, which he accidentally gave Furuhashi as it was placed in a similar bag with his sister's material. But the next day, Furuhashi wore the bra despite adding 3 more paddings to fit in the garment. A little anxious about what she was wearing, Nariyuki greeted and walked with her to school. Nariyuki asked her about the comforts of his gift. However, this only gave her more misconceptions about his supposed gift, which was a left-handed ballpoint pen. The tension she felt made her act differently that day, which at first Nariyuki did not notice. Dismissal of classes came, and the 3 tutees and Nariyuki gathered in the library for their tutoring sessions when Takimoto and Ogata offered their presents to Furuhashi. She thanked them, but they asked her suddenly about Nariyuki's gift. Like an overripe tomato, her face turned red from all the mixed emotions she felt. She kept stopping Nariyuki from telling them about his gift, and he could only stutter the letter B, referring to the ballpoint pen. They spoke to each other alone, and this time they realized the differences in their thoughts. So later in the afternoon, he immediately went home to get the ballpoint pen he ought to have given her and apologized for the misconception. All things fine now, he studied in front of his mother when she complained about the shortage of staff from her manager. He immediately volunteered to be there in her stead, as she would be working at her different workstation tomorrow. Little did he know that his work would be wearing a mascot for a massage boutique named Hand Rub Relaxation. Without any choice, he was up for it when a call from the school of the manager's daughter came up to inform her about her daughter's fever. More short-staffed than before, he had to do the massaging too. He grounded himself in the belief that what he was doing was for his family and his mother. So still wearing his mascot costume, he entered the first room of the client, which was actually Miss Kirisu. With mighty goosebumps crossing every inch of his body, he staggered towards her as he asked for a lower back massage to ease her muscle pains. He tried his best to massage her. Unexpectedly, she yelped in sensations of pain and satisfaction as his skills in massaging rated a 5-star. Hearing Miss Kirisu's sounds, the assistant manager came into the room and complimented him for doing a good job. This motivated him to do his work better, but as soon as he encountered his next customers, he wanted to just disappear into oblivion. Furuhashi and Ogata were his next clients who did not know that the person inside the mascot was their tutor and was a guy. They complimented his skills as he massaged them splendidly. Not being lucky enough, his next client was Asumi, who at first denied massaging as a waste of time. However, until she felt way too good because of Nariyuki's massage, she accidentally took off Nariyuki's head costume while he failed to notice it as he was focusing too much on his massage skills. This caused a little commotion in the small room, causing Takimoto, who arrived along with the girls who invited her to come, to be curious about the room. From there, they saw the situation Asumi and Nariyuki were in, and it felt kind of embarrassing to see him pressing on her feet, motivated to make her feel better while Asumi made sounds of satisfaction in front of the girls. Miss Kurisu opened the door to her bath so she could slip into the warm bath she prepared as a good day starter. She poured some water on her head. Suddenly she screamed extravagantly, almost waking up the whole neighborhood. The water was too cold for her before she found out that the heater in her apartment floor was on maintenance. Without any choice, she went ahead to the public bath where Asumi was headed too. Asumi teased Kirisu for being her unusual self for taking a bath in a public area. She explained her side when Nariyuki and his 2 young siblings arrived and saw them. He joins in the conversation before they all head inside the public bath. Prior to that, Nariyuki's female sibling pleaded with Kirisu to marry her brother and complimented her beauty. Kirisu blushed at such a compliment and thanked the kid anyway. The public bath was separated into 2 different baths for men and women. Nariyuki was about to get in the bath when his naughty little siblings rushed to him and brought female undergarments. What a cute little sibling he has. His face flushed red because of his dirty thoughts. Panicky, he screamed at them to return those all at once. He then calmed himself and shrugged off what had happened. Meanwhile, Miss Kurisu was in the sauna with Asumi and questioned her habit of always going to saunas before the bath. Asumi realized that she and Miss Kurisu cannot strike a flowing conversation when they are alone, so she starts to talk about Nariyuki's progress. Asumi corrected her anxiety by pulling her down. Kurisu shivered in surprise by the sudden pull. Asumi teased Miss Kurisu and admitted how jealous she was of her milky white skin. Miss Kurisu screamed to beg her to stop touching her sensitive areas. Meanwhile, in the men's bath area, Nariyuki was trembling as he heard the ladies' conversation about touching sensitive parts and started to think of wild Yuri-type bonding between Miss Kurisu and Asumi. Nariyuki's younger sister slipped inside the ladies' area and gets starstruck on how pretty Miss Kurisu's skin was and asked her to marry her older brother. He started to refuse the offer that made the kid cry. Refusing to hurt the child's feelings, Miss Kurisu changed her answer from no to someday, which made Nariyuki's sister jump with joy. The little girl then said that she was going to tell her older brother right away, which made Miss Kurisu panic and slip. The receptionist asked for the youngest man's help, and it was so happened that the only young man in the bath that day was Nariyuki. Miss Kurisu regained consciousness after a few minutes and senses being cradled, handled well. She later on wakes up to realize that she was in Nariyuki's arms. They look like a newlywed couple. Embarrassed, she immediately scolds Nariyuki for indecency. However, upon going home, Kurisu was informed of what truly happened earlier, so she apologized to Nariyuki for what she had said to him a while ago. The day after, Nariyuki came to the office of their English professor along with Ogata and Furuhashi for a mock interview to practice for higher-level interviews. Ogata and Furuhashi were of strength as they were quivering in fear and nervousness. At first, Furuhashi tried to run away by recommending a good food place for them to eat and do their tutoring sessions, but Nariyuki seemed determined to let them have the interview. He comforts the girls by telling them that the interview will swiftly pass as their English professor was not strict. Agreeing, the girls sat down at the waiting area when the door slammed open. Miss Kurisu was substituting for their English teacher. All their souls raised up invisibly to heaven, while all their nervousness came rushing in. First up, Ogata answered reluctantly and was still grilled by Miss Kurisu's complex questions that almost took away her soul after the interview. The same happened to Furuhashi, who answered the first question almost well but was not able to dodge the next questions. Lastly, Nariyuki was forced to do the interview as he was also a student who needed practice. He was disturbed by her presence in the scenes that occurred in the public bath yesterday, so he tried to imagine her in the most casual attire. As soon as he opened his eyes, she was wearing a daring swimsuit, disturbing him more. Almost failing the interview, he managed to pull off the last question, but was still grilled by the end of it. Better luck next time, brother. During the tutoring sessions between Nariyuki and Ogata in the library, he managed to invite Ogata to go on a sample lecture in a university that was a known school that offered great psychology courses. Nariyuki showed Ogata the university's brochure when a swift runner came in to barge into their conversation. Sekijo also showed the same brochure to Ogata, but only found out that Nariyuki had already shown it first. Awkward silence kept the space cold for a moment, but Ogata broke the ice when she decided that the three of them should go to the sample lectures together. So, on the day of the event, Ogata sat on the bench to wait for her company. Sekijo hid in the bush behind the bench and texted Ogata that she wouldn't be coming because of stomach issues. Little did she know, Nariyuki also proposed the same reason to Ogata while hiding on the other side of the bush. Ogata expressed her sadness of not having both her friends come along with her. This startled Nariyuki and Sekijo, causing them to jump out and be found. So with no choice, all of them headed over to the event. As they entered the school, a sample lecture in mathematics was being held in one classroom. Since Ogata was a math genius, this class was quite easy for her, but not really for the other two. Nariyuki intended for Sekijo to spend some time with Ogata based on her tweets last night of how excited she was to join the event with Ogata. The same thing occurred in Sekijo's mind, but for Ogata to spend some time with her crush. Hence, Sekijo and Ogata were the ones to attend the math class since Nariyuki won the rock-paper-scissors game with Sekijo. And so, in the middle of the mathematics lecture, Ogata dozed off and leaned her head towards Sekijo's shoulder. This caught Sekijo off guard as warmth showed up on her face. However, the lecturer did not let this attitude off, so he called the attention of the two high schoolers and challenged them to answer an equation. Meanwhile, Nariyuki walked down the hall towards the lecture hall, hoping that the lecture was almost at its end. As he moved closer, he saw the lecturer praising Ogata's genius mind in mathematics. For that reason, he noticed that the crowd seemed overwhelming for Ogata. so he immediately pulled her away along with Sekijo, who was in love with Ogata's mind too. Escaping from the crowd, Ogata needed to attend the psychology lecture now with Nariyuki since Sekijo left minutes ago. Immediately after the psychology class, the two felt awkward because of the lecturer's random topic on first kisses. Nariyuki received a text message from Sekijo to hold hands with Ogata. Panicky, he immediately searched for Sekijo and found her hiding behind the tree near them. He ran to catch her and promised Ogata to bring Sekijo back. Left behind, Ogata was invited by college students to have some barbecue with them while waiting for her friends. But later on, Nariyuki and Sekijo arrived to see a drunk Ogata who had only smelled the fumes of the beer minutes before. Oh, Ogata, what a cute thing you are being drunk off fumes. That being said, the two of them had to carry Ogata shoulder by shoulder until she sobered up. They sat her down on a bench in the park when the drunk Ogata expressed her feelings about today. She felt bad about them running away every time because she was looking forward to going together with the two of them since last morning. Nariyuki apologized while Sekijo attempted to take off her shirt as a sign of girl friendship. Chaos came over the two of them while Ogata napped as she sobered up before going home. Nariyuki visited their swim coach's office because he was called out for his failing grades in physical education. He stuttered in fear of failing in the only subject he was bad at and asked his advisor which sport he needed to take to save his grades. After his short counseling with the coach, they both headed to the swimming gym of the school to practice his zero skills in that specific sport. He tried to paddle but struggled too much, causing him to drown and panic more. His coach lost some faith in his skills but still continued to persevere with him. "You can do it, Nariyuki." At the other side of the pool, Takimoto, who was a genius swimmer and known for winning several national competitions, was warming up to train for her upcoming competition. Her co-swimmers boosted her morale and expected her to win her competitions easily when she saw the struggling Nariyuki at the first lane of the pool. She bolted at the sight of the drowning friend and secret crush and managed to be recognized by their swim coach. She came closer to check on Nariyuki and saw his skills were highly poor. The coach asked for someone who could teach Nariyuki the basics of swimming, and only Takimoto was the best swimmer around. Without complaints, she plunged into the pool and came closer to Nariyuki. In the hopes of learning how to swim through the help of Takimoto, Nariyuki understood nothing of what she was talking about as she did not know how to teach anyone. Mainly because she was a genius who was good at swimming but did not know why. The swim coach was about to intervene when Miss Kirisu intervened with the swim team first. She called the attention of their coach about the missing document which she forgot to submit to Miss Kirisu that day. The coach scratched her head and immediately ran away while giving the responsibility to substitute for the day to Miss Kirisu. Without a choice, she instantly changed into a one-piece and turned on her strict aura that scared the heck out of the team members. Going back to Nariyuki and Takimoto's swimming tutorial, Miss Kirisu saw them struggling to converse the tutorial out. So she plunged into the pool to teach Nariyuki the basics by guiding him properly until he could move a little. After which, Takimoto took a bath when Miss Kirisu asked for some shampoo. She handed her shampoo and checked out Miss Kirisu's body proportions, which she deemed a balanced one. Miss Kirisu opened the conversation for Takimoto, so she immediately asked the teacher about having a sport and winning competitions. She expressed her fears and concerns about her upcoming competition, and she was given by Miss Kirisu an eye-opening advice which cleared her head. So by the time her competition began, she already knew what she wanted and what she needed to do and finally grabbed her success over again. Days after winning the competition, Takimoto was called to the school president's office to propose to her a scholarship to study abroad as a varsity player in a foreign university swim team. Way to go, Ogata! Congrats! She was scampered by the pressure of deciding, so she asked for some time and went immediately silent during her tutoring sessions at the library with Nariyuki and the two girls, and she became avoidant of Nariyuki as well. Furuhashi noticed her behavior, so she invited Takimoto to have a meal with her after their session. Consequently, during their meal, Furuhashi encouraged Takimoto to speak up about her concerns. Later on, she found out that Takimoto was invited to study abroad and worried about her relationship with Nariyuki. She tried to encourage her that maybe it's not such a bad thing when Nariyuki entered the restaurant to eat alone. Nariyuki then saw Furuhashi and asked if she was alone today. Furuhashi was about to disagree as she was with Takimoto when she could no longer find Takimoto where she was seated a while ago. She received a text from her telling her she was under the table. This flustered innocent Furuhashi, causing her to talk with Nariyuki alone. He then sat down in front of Furuhashi and immediately took his notebook to translate sentences to English for Takimoto while he continued to speak good words about her. Takimoto almost jumped in joy under the table when Nariyuki noticed the movement and attempted to look under. To prevent him from seeing Takimoto, Furuhashi screamed, calling him a pervert if he looked down. As their conversation about Takimoto deepened, Furuhashi asked him what he would feel for Takimoto if she had someone she liked. He told her he'd be happy for Takimoto, but he'd miss her. Suddenly, he rushed to the supermarket for a sale, and Furuhashi met him after to tell him that Takimoto was not seeing someone. Finally, Takimoto made her decision to study abroad, but she asked the president to keep it a secret from her friends, especially Nariyuki. Furuhashi walked inside a room silently during the night to place a piece of document on the table. Worry and reluctance were seen on her face as she left the room to head to sleep. And on the next day, an individual parent-teacher conference was being held. Nariyuki's mom was teased by the teacher to somehow lighten up the mood before he opened the topic on the potential VIP recommendation for Nariyuki. His eyes gleamed with hope to raise his family from poverty when the teacher mentioned the VIP recommendation to Ikunose University and other large schools for his future career a few minutes ago. His teacher asked him what he would like to take if he ever got the VIP recommendation. With no hesitation, he instantly asked his teacher what course would get him paid the highest in the future. The three of them went silent after his question. Up until the end of the counseling, Nariyuki's mother kept silent. She went to take some air through the hallway windows and broke the silence. She queried about his dreams and asked him not to prioritize them and just consider their family as a goal along the way. He seemed determined and firm that he was happy with what he chose in the past and what he was choosing right now. After their talk, Furuhashi exited the other room and saw them. He asked about her parents, but Furuhashi informed him that they were too busy to attend, and she was fine with it. Nariyuki's mother left them behind without further notice. As a result, Furuhashi had to leave the campus with Nariyuki. Meanwhile, Sekijo met Ogata and asked how the conference went. Ogata explained that the conference went well, except that she had sent her dad out because of his illness and just continued on with the conference without a parent. A few minutes later, Mr. Furuhashi appeared out of nowhere and started to convince Ogata to take mathematics as her major in college. Nariyuki and Furuhashi entered the scene. They were intrigued when they saw Sekijo, Ogata, and Mr. Furuhashi in one frame. Furuhashi was surprised to see her father, assuming that he may have gone to the parent conference as well. But he cleared his reason as he did not go there to meet teachers. Judging by his actions, he went there to pursue Ogata to take up mathematics as he found her skills useful in the field of mathematics. He then grabbed Furuhashi's list of desired universities with the types of degree she planned to study. He discouraged her in mathematics and recommended for Furuhashi to study liberal arts instead. He then proceeded to grab Ogata's shoulder and explained once more on how important she could be in the math field. Furuhashi grabbed her father and asked for Sekijo to take Ogata away, and exclaimed that her father loses his perspective every time he talks about math. Sekijo, being confused with the chaos, assumed that she was being told to elope with Ogata. Furuhashi yelled at her, reprimanding Sekijo to take Ogata away. He then grabbed Ogata's hand and ran away. Meanwhile, Furuhashi, her dad, and Nariyuki were left behind. Nariyuki spoke out to both that they should discuss family matters at home. Mr. Furuhashi refused and told Furuhashi that if she continued to study any of the degrees she chose, she'd be better off living alone than to come home. Nariyuki volunteered to have her stay at his residence in the meantime, so they ended up coming home together. As soon as he got home with Furuhashi, his sister Miyasuki greeted him but was baffled as soon as she saw a girl with her brother. Later on, the whole family sat at a table with their meal. Nariyuki's mother then agreed for Furuhashi to stay with them and stopped Furuhashi from thinking that she became a burden to them. Furuhashi exclaimed that she didn't have anything to wear, which was then agreed upon by Miyazuki, saying that her clothes wouldn't fit Furuhashi. Then Nariyuki suggested that she could wear his clothes instead. Furuhashi got into a hot tub later on with Mizuki and Nariyuki's mother, reminding Furuhashi that she left her toothbrush at the sink. Both Furuhashi and Mizuki started talking about him, and she cleared out that she would never be in a relationship with Nariyuki, as she was thinking of Ogata and Yuruka. The next scene then showed Furuhashi brushing her teeth with Nariyuki in the bathroom. She felt like they were newlyweds, but brushed off the thought when she reminded herself about what she told Miyazuki. Later on, as everybody had gone off to bed, Nariyuki and Furuhashi were studying when they suddenly spoke about Furuhashi's father. She shared about her mother being a mathematician as well, but her father fell into despair when she passed away. She then spaced out and decided to go to bed as soon as she was interrupted by Nariyuki. The next morning, he headed off to school, but decided not to leave the house together as people might get the wrong idea of them being together. Yeah, right. That will look so suspicious. Furuhashi arrived at school and was at the locker area conversing with Yuruka. She was then complimented with her new scent and new shampoo, which was then questioned by Yuruka as to what type of scent she was wearing. Furuhashi fainted and her mind went haywire due to anxiety. After school, she decided to come home to her house with Nariyuki to take her clothes with her. She explained that her father barely comes in early, As they were about to head down to exit the house, Mr. Furuhashi entered the door. Both jumped inside an empty cabinet and hid as her father came upstairs. He was about to open the cabinet, but a call grabbed his attention and he left the house once more. Both sighed in relief, and Nariyuki came out first. But Furuhashi took a while after she figured out that her father hid her mother's laptop in that cabinet. They then sat at a table and tried to pull up her mother's laptop, only to find two folders. One was a regular folder, and the other one was with a star icon and was secured with a password. Furuhashi explained that the folder contained her mother's thesis, one that her father was hiding away from her. Nariyuki woke up with Furuhashi cooking breakfast instead of his mother. She was told by Nariyuki's mom that their family had plans on that day except for Nariyuki. They were both tasked to do chores at home. They started the day with themselves doing chores, but both ended up in chaos. Nariyuki took a bath, but after a few minutes, Furuhashi rushed inside the bathroom and offered to clean Nariyuki's back. Nariyuki turned red when he saw Furuhashi wanting to get in the tub with him. As soon as Furuhashi joined Nariyuki, she started to rub the towel on his back and suddenly remembered a flashback of her past, with her doing the same to her father when she was just young. Nariyuki then told her that she didn't have to keep pretending like she had to stay away from her father. But Furuhashi explained that it was better that way since they had not been seeing each other eye to eye since then. She suddenly rested on Nariyuki's back and closed her eyes. She went to sleep, and later on that night, she suddenly woke up, realizing that she still had to study. She was greeted by Nariyuki's younger brother and sister. Nariyuki told her to sleep longer since she deserved to rest, as she had been doing a lot that day. She refused, but Nariyuki just agreed with her. He then invited her for a date, which she agreed on. Nariyuki took Furuhashi to the mountains with a good view of the night skies with a lot of visible stars. Nariyuki started naming each, and Furuhashi was delighted to know that Nariyuki studied each star that he mentioned. Furuhashi talked more about the stars, naming and describing each and every one with a very cheerful mood. Nariyuki then asked if she had already told her father about the stars and if Furuhashi had already told him how much she loved the stars. Furuhashi disagreed and said that her father wouldn't listen. Nariyuki told her that he only got interested in the stars as soon as Furuhashi told him about them. Furuhashi took a sip of her tea when she suddenly spurted it out because it was so hot, and then she stood up and lost her balance, which was then caught up by Nariyuki, who told her that she had his full support and should give herself a try to speak to her father again. She then remembered a memory of her mother, asking her if there's a star that she wanted to name. What would it be? Furuhashi came home and waited for her father to arrive. She gathered her full strength to speak to him about what she really wanted, but he still rejected her choices and made it clear that his decisions were final and wouldn't be changing. She then told him about her passions and how they would always look up to the night skies before, but he spoke to her without emotions and told her that it wasn't the same as before, and said that his wife would have agreed with him with his decision if she were still alive. Furuhashi then suggested asking her mom. Her father was in great shock when he found out that she found the laptop that he was hiding. He then told her that she was told not to touch it, but then she was able to open the laptop without telling him how she was able to open it. She then explained that there was no thesis inside the laptop, but a file folder with a star icon. It contained an MP4, which was the last video of her mother. They both watched the video, and it unveiled several things that her father didn't know about, including how her mother used his first name, Raiji, as the file's password, and Furuhashi naming a star with his first name, Raiji, since her younger self reasoned out that it should be a name that she and her mother loved. Later on, Furuhashi was found with her mother and a telescope on a balcony. Her mother told her that she might feel lonely very soon, but assured her that she shouldn't feel bad, because just as her father had supported her mother, she will someday find someone who will support her all throughout too. She then said some words in the air. Nariyuki asked if she was saying something. She replied that it was just nothing and thanked Nariyuki for supporting her all the way. They sat on the balcony outside her home, and Nariyuki reasoned out that he did nothing, but Furuhashi still thanked him anyway. She then leaned on his shoulder and pretended to be asleep. Nariyuki understood and said she might have been very tired after doing a lot for the day. But then Furuhashi said she was awake, and both felt a little awkward right after. She said she'll move a bit soon, but asked if they can stay that way for a while. Next day, she came out of the conference room with her father and explained to Nariyuki that she finally got the approval of her father. Mr. Furuhashi had gone to Nariyuki's residence to speak with his mother and handed over his token of gratitude by giving money in return for taking care of his daughter while they were in conflict. He explained that after his wife passed away, he fell into despair and had once raised a hand on his daughter in a fit of irrational anger. He was ashamed of himself but said that he was perplexed since then, and because all he thought about was math, he was unable to focus on his daughter more. The next scene then showed Nariyuki and Furuhashi assuming that the person her father was talking to on the say that they almost got caught was Nariyuki's mother. Furuhashi exclaimed as she spoke about how socially awkward her father is. Then Mr. Furuhashi suddenly spoke up from behind and asked if they were talking about him. Mr. Furuhashi stopped by because he remembered that he had a matter to attend to, which was asking Nariyuki in what stage their relationship is with his daughter, since she was stayed at his residence for a few days. Both cleared out that they did not have any types of relationships and were just friends, and asked her father to leave. The tutoring group of Nariyuki and the girls dined in the restaurant to finish off some homework while a little conversation was made. They were talking about what each of them will be taking as their major after third year, while Nariyuki became silent when he was asked. So, when the night came, he began to contemplate in front of his study table at home while his family was asleep. He considered Miss Kirisu's questions during their mock interview, his mother's words during the parent-teacher conference, and what he truly wanted. When the next day came, the school festival ambience was already booming. Nariyuki was sewing the costumes for their booth when a classmate needed some extra plywood, so he volunteered to get some. While walking, he went past the girls who were filling up their brims with udon. He asked for some from Ogata and was given a good portion. Technically, it was Ogata's group booth, and Furuhashi and Takimoto were only there to eat and leech out of Ogata's food stall. They conversed for a while about their roles during the festival, and Nariyuki was the only one with a free hand during that day. The girls had so much on their schedule that time, so he had to excuse himself so they can work already. Meanwhile, in the faculty room, the two male teachers who were assigned to facilitate the school-wide conference conversed with Miss Kirisu regarding her costume for the festival. She agreed with them on the details, but they were a bit troubled upon talking outside the faculty room. On the other hand, Furuhashi's booth group held a meeting inside the classroom about the upcoming play, which will be The Sleeping Beauty, and the majority voted for Furuhashi to be the main character. With all her might, Furuhashi stood up, almost causing havoc upon trying to explain why she should not be in the spotlight. Yet again, she was dragged away for the costume fitting as it was already a fixed plan, and she has no way of getting out of it. Going back to Nariyuki, he was alone, happily sewing some costumes when Miss Kirisu arrived to inform him that school hours are over. He rushed out to ask Miss Kirisu if he could have another mock interview with her because he wanted to fix his mind on a major now. Unfortunately, she firmly agreed to help him out. The day of the festival came, and all were excited, nervous, and prepared for the events, while Nariyuki has the free day to walk around and enjoy since he's done with his roles in his booth. Fidgety, he decided to help out at another booth instead of doing nothing, so he went to Ogata's booth first. Unfortunately, Ogata's father delivered too much udon which needed to be sold, so he had to give out flyers when he met the swim team who had a dilemma on Takimoto's lost costume. Hence, while handing out flyers, he went out of his way to search for the costume as well. Kid shouted at his mom that he saw a person wearing a costume up in the sky, so he immediately went to the rooftop only to see Miss Kirisu wearing the pink fairy costume that's supposedly for Takimoto, and got placed at her office. He explained the situation to Miss Kirisu and everything was going well. Consequently, he accompanied one of his classmates backstage to help the swim team successfully push their play. The curtains began to open and the cast were introduced. However, instead of Takimoto being on stage, Miss Kirisu was playing the part. Kirisu Sensei is so adorable. The costume perfectly suits her. The crowd went wild the moment they grooved on stage. The students did not expect Miss Kirisu, who was always so reserved and strict, to dance in front of the whole school. The music blasted, but Miss Kirisu already warned Nariyuki that if she was to choose between singing or dying, she would choose the latter. So she never opened her mouth nor lip-synced to the song throughout the choreography. Suddenly, the lights turned off after the performance and showed the people on stage. Takimoto is now with the group of Miss Kirisu to sing another song to fully hype the audience. Uproar filled the stadium as the performance came to an end. Before the people went out, the group on stage advertised Ogata's udon in order to raise the needed 1,000 orders. Although the food was advertised and had raised above 200 orders, Nariyuki was still worried of failing to reach the quota. So he strived to give out flyers after the performance. Suddenly, while giving out flyers, a student from Furuhashi's group approached him. She introduced herself and intrigued him about them being able to help sell out the udon. In his desperate times, he immediately attended to what she would want him to do in return for the favor. With innocent eyes, she told him to help them out with the costumes for their play. He immediately went with her without knowing that her plan was to capture Furuhashi's prince-to-be in the play. She told him to change into some staff clothes when he seemed to suspect her actions. When he changed into the costume assigned for him, it was a cat mascot in a prince costume. At first, he was confused but went out anyway. As soon as he opened the door to exit the room, the two male teachers who were looking for the specific cat costume were running towards him. As a reflex, he ran as fast as he could to escape them for whatever reason they had in mind. All he wanted was to go to the gym so he could help out Furuhashi's group and help Ogata sell out the udon. Moreover, as if on cue, Asumi, who is an alum of the school and who helped her new club members give a good performance earlier, encountered the cat prince. From his voice, she recognized him and helped him escape the teachers and go to the gym. During the scene of the play where the prince would be kissing the sleeping beauty, played by Furuhashi, the prince was nowhere to be found. So the president of the school challenged the whole audience to find the greatest man who is eligible to kiss the sleeping beauty. This caused some commotion that caused the backdrop to fall. As the backdrop was about to fall on sleeping Furuhashi, Nariyuki jumped and saved her from it like a prince. Everyone was shocked, and Furuhashi was desperate to end the play, so she apologized softly to whoever was behind the mascot and kissed the cat prince. And so the crowd went wild. The performance was a hit. However, the prince immediately ran away from the scene as he felt awkward and was blushing real hard from the indirect kiss. Although he left, Furuhashi continued the act and was applauded for her ad-lib despite not having the same plot as the original story. After the play, he took off his costume and went out of an office that was not familiar to him. He brought with him the costume when the male teachers saw him sneaking out but were no longer chasing after him. He was about to go back to give out the flyers again as he thought he failed his job right there. Eventually, he encountered Furuhashi's classmates who did not know that it was him behind the cat prince costume. They cursed who was behind it, and so he kept it a secret from them as well. Meanwhile, the people from the audience a while back saw the flyer that fell out from Nariyuki's pocket when he ran away from the stage. So, because they were curious of the identity of the prince, they immediately rushed to the udon booth, hoping they could find who was behind the costume there. As more people were lining up for the udon, Furuhashi and Takimoto helped out selling the food when Ogata took a little break from cooking and ate some udon with Nariyuki. Nariyuki's noodles were quite hard, so Ogata immediately checked from his bowl and ate some. However, the noodle that she was able to take was the same strand of noodle Nariyuki was eating, causing them to have a short couple-like moment. A kid teased them for the act and they instantly blushed and moved away from each other. This gave Nariyuki an idea to further sell out the udon. Couples from outside the campus are probably here for the fireworks and the jinx that comes with it. The jinx tells them that the first hand a person can touch during the first fireworks will become a couple forever. So, Asumi advertised a couple promo which made a longer line in the udon booth. What a brilliant idea you had! Ha! Good job, Nariyuki. Finally, the udon sold out before the end of the day, and all of the friend group was able to be present during the night to witness the firework display. Furuhashi's group, who strived to flourish her relationship with Nariyuki, pushed her to him. Sekijo, who wanted Ogata to have Nariyuki, pushed her to him, and Takimoto, who has a crush on him, pushed herself as well, all at the same time. This caused all of them to fall over Nariyuki, who was standing in front of them, which even more caused him to be pushed over Miss Kirisu and Asumi. All 5 of them fell to the ground, but the firework was a FUD. It did not light, so the announcer tried to count again. Just as the fireworks exploded, a hand reached out to Nariyuki. But when he stood to check whose hand it was, all he saw was the girls, including Asumi and Miss Kirisu, enjoying the firework display. Who could it be? A smile plastered on his face seeing the scene in front of him. The next day, he had the mock exam with Miss Kirisu and impressed her by his skills and passion to achieve a major in basic education. The next few days and months came when they were already busy with their entrance exams and their graduation. Finally, all of them got the successes that they were striving for during their high school days and passed at their desired universities. They were up for new adventures as they entered a new journey as mature individuals. Finally, they'll be entering college. Just how fast the time has passed. We started witnessing their journey as high school students. Now they'll be embarking on their college journey.